Here's the first one I wrote down. Excessive information can lead to worse, not better decisions. I don't know if you recall that from Blumberg's book. Do you recall if that is backed by science or not backed by science, as you can recall?
I believe that one had some pretty good scientific backing. And, you can imagine the studies, and I'm sure Blumberg read them and cited them, that support this kind of finding, where somebody is kind of overwhelmed with information about a decision and they freeze, or they take longer to make the decision, or they make a worse decision. And actually a lot of Blumberg's advice, I think, actually comes from what is this, core scientific finding about the limitations on people's attention. We can't hold on to that much information at once. And that's a kind of core failing of human psychology. And so trial lawyers, I think Blumberg is exactly right, should keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And appellate lawyers. I can't tell you how many
Absolutely.
times I've been in cases where the other side files an application for an oversized brief. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Application to make worse arguments.
Exactly.
To undermine my persuasive impact. I remember Blumberg related a story about a study where participants were asked to remember, a certain number of numbers, I think, and then walk down the hall and report all the numbers they could remember to the other person with the clipboard at the end of the hall. And the first group did it and reported their numbers and did fine. And then the second group went down the hall, but right before they got to the person with the clipboard, they were confronted by another person who gave them another bit of information. And then they did much, much worse than the first group. So I think it goes to your initial tip when we first started talking about, don't throw the spaghetti at the wall. Don't make too many arguments. It undermines your persuasive impact.
And sometimes I found myself actually digging in, trying to come up with like the third nuance on some argument I'm trying to make in a brief, like just kind of digging deeper. And I thought, okay, I can barely think of a way to write this down in a way that I'll be able to understand it 2 months later. Maybe I shouldn't even say this, because there's basically zero chance that the person reading it is even going to get what I'm saying. So an argument can be perfectly logical and correct, but it's a loser argument because it's too complex. And this gets to this point.
Yeah. Yeah, you almost might think of it as imagine if you could talk underwater, trying to communicate to someone underwater while they're holding their breath. Get the key points out and then let that person get up for a gasp of air, for heaven's sake.
You have just listened to the California Appellate Podcast, a discussion of timely trial tips and the latest cases and news coming from the California Court of Appeal and the California Supreme Court. For more information about the cases discussed in today's episode, our hosts, and other episodes, visit the California Appellate Law Podcast website at calpodcast.com. That's calpodcast.com. Thanks to Jonathan Caro for our intro music. Thank you for listening, and please join us again.